Hello, welcome to another episode of The Critics. Today we are talking about the Thor trilogy. Now this is going to be part of my Marvel saga that I'm working on. The Marvel movies, I'm going through all of them, talking a little bit about them, not getting into too much detail, but some ultimately leading up to Avengers Infinity War, which is coming out in just 1 month. I am so excited. I can't even fully explain to you how excited I am for this movie coming out. So, for today, we're going to be talking about the Thor trilogy. Now, the original Thor film came out in 2011 and starred Chris Hemsworth, who at the time was very unknown. He had done a few films, but he wasn't really a big name star. It also had Tom Hiddleston, who was not a big name star at the time, and it did have a couple names that you've probably heard, like Anthony Hopkins and Natalie Portman, who were big stars. Now, this casting was fine at the time. Chris Hemsworth, I feel, has grown as an actor. In this movie, he still hadn't really came into his own as an actor, and so he did okay, but this movie had a lot of problems. Realistically, the Thor films are probably the weakest of all of Marvel's films. It's just the way it is. And for me, I do honestly think that part of that is because Hemsworth is not the strongest of actors. He's not a bad actor by any means, but he's not the best actor either. There are times where things feel a little bit forced, things feel a little bit fake, and because of that, it lacks a little bit. One thing that the Thor films did bring us, and that is Loki. Loki is a fan favorite villain. Many people consider him to be the best villain of the MCU, and it's very understandable why. He is great. The way that he is complex and he is intense, everything about him is a great villain. That's why they reused him in Avengers, and that's why they brought him back numerous times, because he's such a compelling character that they turned him into that. Very good, very well done. Some of the good things I liked about this movie was I did like that we saw other places besides from just Earth. This is before Guardians of the Galaxy, so we weren't in space, we didn't see anything else, we just saw Asgard, and they did a really beautiful job with Asgard. Looking at the visual effects of Asgard is just fantastic, and they continuously got better as the years went on too, but this first scene of it was just so good. I very much enjoyed the camaraderie of the Warriors 3, Sif, and Thor. They had a good group dynamic, and it made you actually care about those characters. Some of the action scenes were really good too. When they were fighting on Jotunheim, that was a really cool scene, and a couple of the other scenes that when Thor was going through the SHIELD agents trying to get Mjolnir back, that was an awesome scene. It was super cool to just see him run through all those dudes, even though he didn't have any powers. Just the training that he had was a very cool action scene. It was very captivating. It had good humor in it as well. Now, a lot of the negatives come from the fact that the story just isn't that compelling. Thor lost his power, he was this cocky man, lost his powers, had to regain them, fell in love with Jane Foster, who was fine, and it just bored. For me, it was just a very boring overall movie. It had moments that were really great. It was cool to see some of these characters brought to life for the first time, but overall, it was just kind of boring. I didn't hate the film, but it wasn't great. I give Thor a B. Now, in 2013, after the successful Avengers film, they came out with Thor: The Dark World. Now, this movie had a lot of hype behind it. Hemsworth had been very well received in the Avengers movie. Loki was very well received. It was interesting to see how this would all translate back to when they finally went back to Asgard. And this movie just kind of didn't go well from there. It was cool that they brought in another Infinity Stone, they brought in the Ether. The Dark Elves were just kind of boring. Again, the boredom of the Thor movies just kind of overwhelms me. Malekith just didn't seem like a threat. I always kind of forget about him. You know, even the way they did Loki in this movie was good, but it wasn't as good as even in the original Thor movie or in the Avengers movie. He was just kind of there to be there. He was there for the sake of having Loki, a fan favorite, in the movie. I felt the same about Jane Foster too. She was there to be there, kind of like contractually obligated, but didn't really want to be there. I don't really have a lot of positive things about this movie. In fact, the last time I just watched it prior to doing this, I fell asleep and I had to wake up and rewind it because it's just so boring to me. I remember one of the first few times I've watched this movie, I fell asleep numerous times because this movie just doesn't do anything for me. It does have a couple really cool action scenes. I really do like Curse. I think he's a way better villain than Malekith was. I thought he was not really a complex character, but he was just so powerful that he was intense. And I will say this movie had a little bit more for Idris Elba to do, and I really liked his character. I think he's a really cool character. But overall, not very good things to say about this movie. It was just really boring to me. I give Thor: The Dark World a C. Now, one of the newest films in the Marvel Cinematic bag is Thor: Ragnarok. This movie is widely loved by most people. Interestingly enough, though, I don't really care for it. And I can tell you why. It is the best of the 3 Thor films, but I've stated already, didn't really care for the other couple Thor films, so that's not saying too much in my opinion. But this film did have certain things that were good. They took away with a lot of the boring. This film was definitely not boring, I will give it that. But one of the things that I didn't like about it is because instead of going for the boring, natural way that they had created these characters throughout these numerous films, everyone was different. And I had a problem with that just because, you know, consistency. Thor is a certain way. He has humor from moments to moments throughout multiple different films where he says things and does things that are funny, but he's not a one-liner at every corner type of character. He's just not. And so the fact that they made him that way, it actually kind of bothered me. The humor in this movie, in my opinion, was too much. It had really good moments. Some of the action scenes were really good. But other than that, the humor just really kind of killed it. It bothered me that when the Warriors 3 died in seconds, that was never addressed. I understood why they would be killed that quickly, because Hela was supposed to be so powerful, and they made her a good, compelling villain, more or less. But the fact that Thor never addressed that, he never cared, that bothered me. It bothered me that Thor didn't care when Odin died. Again, just making one-liners and dealing with things and never coming back to it, that bothered me. That kind of took away from what Thor had been created this entire time. And I understand that they wanted to do more for this character, to give him more of an interesting arc, but because of that, I felt like it lacked in the consistency of what this character already is. You can't take a boring person and suddenly have them be funny after 5 movies, in my opinion. That being said, I love a lot of these action pieces. Thor versus Hulk, possibly one of the best Marvel action sequences we've seen. It was really, really great. It was really cool to see Thor without Mjolnir really figuring out his powers and what he can do, where his powers of thunder and lightning really stem from, and that was really cool for me. And I did actually like Hela. I thought Cate Blanchett did a really good job. Jeff Goldblum was funny and he was interesting. I like Karl Urban as an actor. I thought in this movie he was worthless and really dumb. I don't think he should have been there. I thought he was there just for humor plots, and like I said, some of the humor just didn't land for me. Now I want to real quickly talk about Loki. I liked Loki in this movie. He was fine. He was good. I'll say him better than fine. He was good. But my bigger problem also lies from the fact that Loki, they are now turning into an anti-hero. And it's because he's so loved throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe that they want to keep him around. And they can't keep making him a bad guy, so they want to make him like an anti-hero. He sometimes works for good, sometimes works for bad. I get it, but I don't know. It's not really my ideal way. I like villains who are villains. There are some people that they are anti-heroes, so sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And then there's others, they're just bad. And there's no compromise there, and there shouldn't be, because bad is bad and good is good. And that's the way it really should be. I liked Loki in this movie, but I don't like that they're making him an anti-hero. I feel like that's going to be the trend. You know, watching the trailers for Infinity War, it feels like that's going to be the trend. I don't know. Not my favorite. Overall, though, this movie is a lot better than the other two. I would give Thor Ragnarok a solid B+. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be putting up more reviews coming up soon. We have the Avengers 1 and 2 we're going to be talking about. I'm also going to mash in together Spider-Man Homecoming, Incredible Hulk, and Ant-Man all into one review. We're going to talk about that soon. And then ultimately, when it comes out, we're going to be talking about Avengers Infinity War. Obviously, it's what this has been building to. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Have a good one.